Okay, so hi everyone, this is Sam Barclay from Nottingham Trent University. I gave a presentation recently at the Barleap conference in Leeds on using assessment criteria to evaluate course quality and inform materials design. I've had quite a few emails since asking me about the logistics of how I created my evaluation system, so I thought I'd just talk through it for a few minutes. So just to go over briefly what the system did, basically it allowed me to capture data like, when I can find the right slide, like this. Yeah, so I could see how well the student body were performing on each of the sub-criterion. And I was also able to look at different groups. So here we have the students analysed by course length. So you can see the yellow is 20 week, 15 week is grey, orange is 10 weeks, and the 6 week is 6 week is blue, sorry. And I was able to do this because we set the system up to capture, we set a system, we developed a system to capture students' grades. And the first key part was to use Microsoft Forms for grade input. And then we also used a number of Excel sheets that pulled data from a central data sheet to provide the grades for us, and I was able to then analyze that data. But we also gave feedback to the students. Here you can see an example of a student feedback sheet, and also with conditional formatting we were able to highlight the relevant parts of the matrix to give them slightly clearer feedback. So I'm going to try and show you how to do all this. It might make sense in my head. I'm hoping it makes sense when it comes out of my mouth as well. If it doesn't, feel free to send me an email or get in touch, and I'll be very happy to help. Okay, so let's just jump straight into it. Before you begin, you need to have, there are three types of Excel spreadsheets you need. The first one is student names, and that's going to look like something like this, and you can see all this is a list of the students with their student number, and it's really important you get the student number right, because we're going to use that as our key. And here you can see I've got 3 students, myself, my colleague Diane Schmidt, and my other colleague Amy Wang. And you can see at the bottom I have a sheet for each of our assessments, both formative and summative assessments. So if I click on academic writing, yeah, you can see that at the moment there are lots of, the spreadsheet doesn't really make sense, but if you look at the formula, you can see that I've used a VLOOKUP function, and essentially this is going to use this number as the key, and it's going to look for the score for this student in this spreadsheet. Okay, so what we need to do is to put data into this spreadsheet, and then all of the marks from these sheets will be collated in our final grade, and we'll be able to produce a provisional total. Provisional just because at NTU we send our grades to a centralized tracking body who give us the final grades. Okay, so you also need to produce just a basic template, which I've called academic writing test _ input. And the reason this is really important is because it enables you to create a system that you can just copy year after year. You can see here, yeah, I'm able to put the name of the workbook, and this is because I've made a template that I use, as I say, year after year. And then finally, you need to create a student record. And here down the left in column A, we have our assessment points, and going across the columns, we have all of the different criteria. These are the codes that relate to the criteria, and here you can see this will be the student score. And again, all I've done is use a VLOOKUP function, and I'm using the key, the student number as the key. You can see there's nothing here at the moment. That's because we're going to put the student number in there later. But if we have a look here, you can see that, yeah, we're using the same sheet as before. And again, this is the advantage of making a template. It means that all of these spreadsheets will work year on year. And if I jump into one of these other sheets, you can see the writing test. All I've done is written the assessment criteria into an Excel spreadsheet, and I have also added conditional formatting, and all this is saying is that if this cell is C, highlight this cell, highlight this yellow. Okay, and we'll see why that's really useful a bit later on. Okay, so so imagine that your students have they've sat an assessment. You set all these Excel spreadsheets up. The students then sit their assessment, and the raters are producing a score for that assessment. What we do is ask our raters to use Microsoft Forms to input their grades. So let's just talk through this. You can see the booklet ID. This is just so if there's any discrepancy between the reported grade, or we want to go back and moderate a paper, it enables me to find the paper far more quickly. The student name, I use my own name. Yeah, if I can type it. And then the student number. Okay, and again, it's really important that this is accurate. So what I do is provide each teacher with a class list, and then they can just copy and paste the student number from that class list. Okay, so then the teachers will input all the grades here. Yeah, let's say I'm not a very good writer, so unfortunately I've done very poorly on this assessment. Let's give me a D for accuracy, why not? Okay, and so you can see that these will relate to the assessment criteria. So it doesn't really, it's difficult to, I'm not going to talk through our assessment criteria because that would just take ages. But you can see that we have, so for example, task fulfillment, and there are 3 aspects to that. And so I've given each an individual score, and then down here I'm going to give an overall score for task fulfillment. So it makes sense if there are 3 Ds to give it a D, and then E, D, E, and D. Now this box is really important because it allows teachers or raters to change their mind about a score. So if this was the second time I was inputting this grade and I had wanted to change my mind on a score, I would type yes in here, or just some kind of sign, so the person who is operating the system knows to use this entry rather than the previous one. This is the first time I've submitted these grades, so I'll just leave this blank. And then I click submit. And I would just go to the next one and just keep on working through my students. Okay, so this is all the teachers, all the teachers or the raters, depending on your context. This is all they have to do. And then once all the grades have been inputted, I'll go to the back end, and you can see I've got 4 responses here. And you can see the most recent one is the one we just inputted. And so I'll open this in Excel. Okay, it's downloaded. Okay, and you can see before recording this screen capture, I'd already done 2 students, but you can see that here I changed my mind about Diane's paper, and if we scroll through you can see that this one is an updated entry. So just before I do anything, I need to delete this one. Okay, that's great. So now I know that I have the final grades for these 3 students on the writing test. Okay, so I'm going to copy these. Okay, copy. And then I'm going to go to our academic writing test input template. All I'm going to do is paste there. Okay, there we go. So let's have a look at our student names now. Yeah, and you can see that on the academic writing sheet, the grades have automatically been pulled from the other Excel spreadsheet. And it's automatically calculated their score for this summative assessment. Unfortunately, I have not done very well, but thankfully Diane and Amy have done brilliantly. And you can see when we go to collated, again we have that score here, and then at NTU we have a numerical rating scale, so the numbers that relate to those grades are also here. And of course, I would do the same thing for our coursework essay, the presentations, and our reading and listening tests, and that data will automatically be pulled. I should mention that before I showed you the graphs. Now the way I would produce the graphs is in each of these spreadsheets, I would just turn these letter grades into a numeral. And then here I would just have, I would just work out the mean for this group, sorry, for this sub-criterion. Of course it's not going to work now because these aren't numbers. And then I would also work out the standard deviation, yeah, of this group. Again, it's not going to work. And the graph that had the different colors for the different course lengths, what I was able to do is here I could use the here we have I've done it as kind of different groups, but it could be different course lengths, it could be gender, it could be L1, you know, whatever learner variable you're interested in. So here I've got two different groups, and so I would be able to input that into the analysis and just do like an average if, yeah. So I could work out the average for group A, the average for group B, the standard deviation for group A, the standard deviation for group B, and I could compare their attainment on each of these sub-criterion. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. That's what the teachers will do, or what the raters will do, and also what happens on the back end. And in terms of what the student sees, again, we have this student record, but at the moment nothing's going to be inputted. So what I've done is create a macro in Excel, and you might want to, if you don't know how to do this, there are loads of great tutorials online, or you can maybe ask for help with it. And all the macro does is copy the student number at the top. It then pastes that student number in this box. So I'll just do this for now. Okay, it pastes the student number there. It then copies all of this this sheet, and it saves the values. Yeah, it pastes the values rather, and then it saves this workbook. It gives it the file name of the student number in B1, and then later I'm able to use that file name to send each student an email with their student record attached. And that's because at NTU the students' emails just their student number at ntu.ac.uk. So let's have a look at what one would look like. Yeah, or maybe I haven't opened it. Yeah, so if I go way to the back, eventually it's going to look like this. Yeah, and you can see that we had that when I inputted the writing test data. Yeah, you can see that the data has been automatically copied, and that's because, oh, I haven't put it in there, it's because I was cheating earlier. Yeah, that's because it was using this student number to pull the data from each of the relevant workbooks. Okay. And then if I go to the writing test, yeah, you can see that we have highlighted the grades, highlighted the relevant boxes, and this is going to be really useful to the student. It's going to give them much more actionable feedback than this. Really, it puts it all in one place. So in a nutshell, that is what I've done, and it's what we do at NTU, and it's saved us, I would say, probably 100 hours of teacher input time, and we have only 200 students. It's just really centralized everything we do and made it much easier both for teachers to input grades. It's made it much easier for me to analyze the quality of our materials and the quality of our input, and it's also made it more effective and more efficient for students to check their grades. So again, I hope that makes sense. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'm more than happy to share any of the things I've made. Otherwise, good luck, and I hope you give this a try, and I hope it works for you. Okay, thank you. Hi there. So predictably, there are a couple of things I forgot to mention. The first one relates to the macro, and that's when I'm producing the individual student records. I mentioned there was a macro that copied the student number, pasted it on the student record template, and then used that as the key to input all of the students' records. Well, after the student record's been saved with the student number as the file name, the macro then just goes to the next student number. So if it did N01234 first, it would then just automatically go to the next student and then produce a student workbook for that student. So basically I don't have to do it by hand. I don't have to go through each student individually. The macro will just do it all really quickly. The other thing relates to the analysis, and I mentioned that you can produce the means of standard deviations, and then I talked about using average if and standard deviation if. Of course, if you have access to SPSS, R, or any other stats software, that's a really good option as well. Actually, that's what I used to produce the descriptive stats that I kind of presented at the beginning of this how-to. If you don't have access to those, though, you can still do some good analysis in Excel. Okay, as I said, let me know if you've got any questions. Otherwise, good luck. Thanks.